The Cuban Missile Crisis did not end with a victory parade. It ended in silence. No speeches, no celebrations, only a quiet agreement hidden from the world for decades. By October 27th, both Kennedy and Khrushchev understood the same truth. If the crisis continued, nuclear war was no longer a possibility, it was a probability. Public negotiations were impossible. Any visible concession would be political suicide. So diplomacy moved into the shadows. A secret channel opened between the White House and the Soviet embassy through journalist and intermediary John Scaly. The message was simple: remove the missiles, avoid war, find a way for both sides to survive. Khrushchev sent two messages. The first was emotional and personal, warning that war would destroy everything both sides had built. The second was harder, more formal, demanding a trade. Soviet missiles out of Cuba in exchange for the removal of American missiles from Turkey. Kennedy made a critical decision. He would respond only to the first letter, publicly.
Privately, something else would happen. Behind closed doors, Kennedy authorized his brother, Robert Kennedy, to meet with Soviet ambassador Anatoly Dobrynin. The message was clear. The United States would remove its Jupiter missiles from Turkey, quietly, within months. No public announcement, no formal agreement. In return, the Soviet Union would dismantle and withdraw its missiles from Cuba immediately. This deal would never be acknowledged. On October 28th, Khrushchev announced that Soviet missiles would be removed from Cuba. To the world, it looked like a clear American victory. Kennedy stood firm. The blockade worked. The Soviet Union backed down. But this was only half the truth. The balance of power had been quietly restored, not by force, but by compromise. As missiles were dismantled and loaded onto ships, the tension slowly eased. American bombers stood down. Naval forces withdrew. The world exhaled. Humanity had survived, not because the system worked, but because individuals chose restraint over pride. Both sides realized how close they had come. The crisis exposed terrifying weaknesses: poor communication, excessive reliance on military solutions, dangerous assumptions about enemy intentions. Nuclear weapons had changed war forever. There would be no winners next time. One immediate result was the creation of the Moscow-Washington Hotline, a direct communication link between leaders. It was a simple idea, but it acknowledged a grim reality. In the nuclear age, misunderstandings kill faster than missiles. The Cuban Missile Crisis was over, but its shadow remained. The world had avoided annihilation barely, and the lessons learned in those 13 days would shape global politics for generations. In the final part, we examine what the crisis changed forever and why it still matters today.
The Cuban Missile Crisis ended in October 1962. But in many ways, it never truly ended, because the rules of the world changed forever. Before 1962, war was still seen as something that could be controlled, escalated, managed, won. The Cuban Missile Crisis destroyed that illusion. For the first time, world leaders fully understood that nuclear war was not a tool of policy, it was the end of policy. Victory no longer meant conquest, it meant survival.
The crisis gave real meaning to a concept that would dominate the rest of the Cold War: mutually assured destruction. Both sides now knew that launching nuclear weapons guaranteed their own destruction. Deterrence was no longer theoretical, it was proven, and it was terrifying. Out of that fear came restraint. In the years following the crisis, nuclear test ban treaties were signed, arms control negotiations expanded, crisis management became as important as military power. The goal was no longer dominance, it was preventing accidents. History remembers presidents and premiers, but the Cuban Missile Crisis was survived because of individuals: Vasily Arkhipov, John F. Kennedy, Nikita Khrushchev, and countless unnamed officers who chose caution over obedience. They did not act as heroes, they acted as humans, and that made all the difference. The most dangerous lesson of the Cuban Missile Crisis is this: it can happen again. Different countries, different technologies, same human flaws. Miscommunication, fear, pride. Nuclear weapons still exist. The margin for error may be even smaller. In October 1962, the world survived not because it was strong, but because it was lucky. Luck is not a strategy. The Cuban Missile Crisis is not just history. It is a warning. For 13 days, humanity stood one decision away from extinction. The next time, we may not be so fortunate.
Why the Cuban Missile Crisis still shapes our world. The Cuban Missile Crisis ended 60 years ago, yet the echoes of those 13 days are still felt today. In every tense negotiation, every nuclear treaty, every moment when leaders choose caution over aggression. 1. Communication is survival. The direct hotline between Washington and Moscow was born because letters and diplomats were too slow. Misunderstandings almost ended life on Earth. 2. Individual courage matters. Vasily Arkhipov refused to launch a nuclear torpedo. One person's restraint prevented global catastrophe. 3. Nuclear weapons change everything. Before 1962, leaders could imagine victory in war. After, they understood, in a nuclear war, there are no winners. 4. Secrecy can save or endanger lives. The secret deal, U.S. missiles out of Turkey, avoided war. Yet the public never knew the full story, showing diplomacy is often invisible. 5. History repeats if ignored. Miscommunication, pride, and fear remain human constants. Modern crises still carry the same deadly potential. Today, global powers still have nuclear arsenals. New technologies, hypersonic missiles, cyber attacks, AI-driven early warning make misunderstandings faster and more dangerous than ever before. The Cuban Missile Crisis is not just a story of 1962. It is a blueprint of risk, caution, and the human decisions that prevent disaster. Ask yourself, what decisions in our world today are just one misstep away from disaster? How do we balance fear, pride, and survival in an age of unimaginable power? History is not just about the past. It is a warning for the present and a lesson for the future. For 13 days, humanity stared into the abyss. We survived, not by chance, not by strength, but because humans, leaders, and ordinary people alike made the choices that allowed life to continue. The Cuban Missile Crisis is over. The lesson
is eternal.